Every business should have an exit strategy. It doesn't necessarily mean sell. It means, what are you going to do with the business eventually? Three ways that you're going to exit a business is either you're going to leave it to someone, you're going to sell it, or you're going to die and it's going to dissolve.
Welcome to The Boost, a podcast for home service contractors. We explore leaders and innovators in home services, their personal journeys, thoughts, and experiences with growth, marketing, and succession. We cover the good, the bad, the ugly, and its ultimate impact. Welcome to another episode of The Boost. I'm Zach Wilson, Chief Marketing Officer of Local. Today, we have Chuck Staszkiewicz, also known as Chuck the Plumber, co-founder of Opus and Golds Group, also known as the OG Group. Love it. Chuck, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
The OG as the tagline for the Opus and Gold Group. Which came first?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting story. I'm the co-founder of it. It's me and my sister partnered together on it. She was my general manager in my previous company, and we decided to partner together on this one. But we had some struggles finding a name. She liked one thing, I liked another thing. So we settled with Opus and Gold. If you look up the definition of Opus, it's really artsy. So that really resonated with her. But Golds is actually the first initial of all of our kids: Goldie, Andrea, Liam, Dylan, and Savannah. So that's how we came up with the Opus and Golds Group.
Oh.
And I'm like, I'm a huge hip hop fan and grew up in the 90s. And so I said, why don't we call it for short the OG Group? Kind of stuck. She got what she wanted. I got what I wanted. And that's the story.
It's great. I love it, especially if you're rooted in the hip hop side. I am not rooted in that. I'm like 90s grunge. All my playlists are like 90s grunge and a little early 2000s indie. And I'm just going back to like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden.
Yep, I listened to those too. I love a lot of music in the 90s. It was a great era.
I know. I kind of feel that way too. Is it like one of those things where it imprints on you at a very influential stage in your life, or was it actually really distinctly different? Because the 80s were pretty bad.
But that generation thought theirs was the greatest too. I think it's a little bit of both.
You could go back to like 40s, 50s, and 60s. It doesn't feel like it has the staying power that some of the other stuff does. And it's probably a function of just where it catches you in your life. My father-in-law would be like, the Beatles are the greatest ever. And I hear a Beatles song and I'm just like, dude, this is terrible. I can't listen to it. Let's talk about home services, investing, exiting, buying, selling. You had a pretty good experience and an exit fairly recently with All Hours Plumbing. Were you in two markets at that point in time?
Yep, Salt Lake City.
Just one. I saw on the website, I think it said Heber.
They're about an hour apart, so I guess you could say it's two markets.
You guys had gone into that at the time?
We were up there, yeah. They broke into St. George, a little further south. That's definitely two markets now. We were in the Salt Lake market. Heber is next to Park City, which is about 45 minutes, an hour away.
Yeah, not really a secondary market, more an extension of your primary. So let's talk about that a little bit. What was that like? How long were you in that? I know you said it went from 0 to 20. So did you guys start that from the ground up? Did you buy that, inherit that?
I started the company in 2011 and I started it out of my garage. And, at the time I've been doing plumbing for 15, 16 years. I was in the trades myself, licensed plumber. Started with the thoughts, I'll have 3 vans and one day I'll pass it off to my son. I didn't have a son at the time, but I figured I would one day. And, things changed. We grew very fast. We went from 0 to $20 million a year in 12 years with 130 employees. And a lot of that changed for me. So I started thinking differently. And okay, it's not 3 vans. So now what do I want to do? 2 years before we exited, I sat down and I said, I want to put together an exit plan. And ultimately that plan led to, I'm not going to pass it down to my son or my daughters. I want to sell it and go on to different things. That's eventually what we did.
That's always an interesting conversation, generational succession, right? I've said this before on the show, but there was a situation in my wife's life. My wife's father was a dentist, and I don't know about what time it was, but maybe it was like sometime in college. I think they were in traditional college. And, he had said a couple times to her and her sister, it's yours if you want it. And they didn't want it. Then the day came, just like you had described. All right, last chance. It's yours if you want it. And couldn't see themselves with their hands in someone's mouth for the rest of their lives. Wanted to do something different. So he sold it and had his exit. Does that resonate with you? Did that happen? Was that conversation, was that thought there? Was the will there? Or were you just like, I don't want to wait that long or whatever?
Yeah, I got into plumbing as a technician. I enjoyed the trades. I enjoyed doing the work. I was kind of forced to be the business owner. I didn't go into it thinking, oh, I'll have 3 vans, couple employees, that's it. Very, very grateful and very blessed for how it ended up. But I didn't enjoy the business part of it at that 10-year mark. And that's why I came up with the strategy. Someone said to me, every business should have an exit strategy. It doesn't necessarily mean sell. It means, what are you going to do with the business eventually? 3 ways that you're going to exit a business is either you're going to leave it to someone, you're going to sell it, or you're going to die and it's going to dissolve, right? You might as well plan it. And that's when I started thinking differently. Well, what are the pros and cons? My kids are young. Today, my kids are 12, 7, and 4 years old. So I didn't want to be in it for another 10 years and then possibly hand it off to one of them if they wanted it. So I made the decision. I was like, okay, it's not something that I want to pass down. I don't want to just pass away and it go away. So I'm going to sell the thing. And that's what I strategized for 2 years, put that plan in place. And then the opportunity presented itself. It was right time. And we put it to market. And that worked out really well for us. And I said to myself, look, my kids are still young. If I want to build a business to leave to them, I'll just start again. It'll be a little bit different, a lot different knowledge this time around. I can start fresh if I want to. So those were the thoughts that went into my decision.
That's an interesting one. It kind of just occurred to me when you said this before too. And I love that. Number one, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that before, which is absolutely true. You've got any way you look at it, the business is going to change hands. There's going to be some event. And do you want to control that event, or do you want the event to control you? And so diving into that a little bit, I'm going back. This is the height of COVID, right? When this is happening, this is like 2020. Now that I'm doing the math here, I'm kind of tired of talking about COVID. Did that play a hand in some of this?
Let's face it, if you were a business owner during COVID, yeah, it definitely made you think differently. Pre-COVID, I was on top of the world, unstoppable. Nothing could touch me. I could open up anything and it would be successful. I could launch another division. It'd be successful. There was no fear. Right? COVID was almost that forced fear for everybody if they allowed it. I'm grateful for COVID. I really am. I think it was one of the best experiences in my time in business because it made me stop and really pay attention to my business and really dial in exactly where I wanted it to go. If COVID wouldn't have happened, me and you would not be sitting here having this conversation. It might be somewhere else doing something else, but it really opened my eyes. I feel COVID was a blessing. Whatever your opinion is over the whole thing, I feel that the situation itself of how it happened opened my eyes. I didn't get into this to be a business owner. I love the trades. The reason I sold was because I didn't really love being the business owner. But I also knew I was gaining a really good skill set. And I realized I couldn't help people in the position that I was in. I know I have more knowledge and things to pass on to other business owners. And being involved in that company, I couldn't do that, if that makes sense.
Reflecting back, what element of COVID put you in that position? Was it mortality, or was it the health of the business that COVID obviously rattled a lot of people and a lot of businesses just from a business health perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting because I probably go on for days about this, but I'll tell you the strongest things that stood out. When the shutdown was coming in, obviously we were essential, so we didn't shut down. We actually doubled in size that year. 2020, we went from 75 employees to 130 employees. I think 3 or 4 million in revenue.
That's so wild because it affected so many people different. I mean, there's people in different trades that went the other way. It's remarkable. I mean, I would love to see if someone could do a study on this or whatever. There were people like yourself, you know, the COVID bump that thrived. And then there were people that had let go half of their staffs just to make sure that they could stay afloat because they were in a market where nobody wanted you. I mean, depending on what market you were in, some markets, nobody wanted you in your home for like 3 years. Like, no, you're not coming in here.
And that's what the biggest realization was, and helped me realize how much of a business person I actually am. I'm not that contractor or that tradesperson anymore. When COVID hit, I didn't clam up. I didn't not know what to do. I remember it very clearly. Me and my sister, she just came on as the GM maybe 3 months before the shutdown. And literally, I remember being on Thursday evening with her. We went to town. We said, okay, what are we going to do? And I said, three main things that we're going to do. We're going to double down on marketing. We're going to get some training and a mentor. We're going to double down on hiring. That's what we did. We knew that, okay, we'd never been through this before, just like anybody else. But what was the best scenario that we could do? And we knew hiring a coach, consultant, mentor was one of those pivotal things. And absolutely why it was successful is because I did that, right? And I put into action a lot of things that he was telling me to do during those times. The other thing is we had a plan. That Monday when we went in, and everybody else was shutting down, we knew who we were going to lay off if we had to. So we didn't need two mechanics working on vehicles. One was fine. We hired the second one because we were adding more trucks and we figured, okay, we could speed the process along, but we didn't need two mechanics. So we ended up laying off 5 people. One of them was actually my father, who was semi-retired and just working part-time for us. We had a solid plan. COVID was a big eye-opener for a lot of things. I didn't let fear overtake me. I made a solid plan. I stuck to the plan. I mean, we hadn't even dialed in, Zach, that we were going to let Service Titan go because that was a big expense. If we had to go back to paper invoices, that's what we were going to do. That meant us staying afloat. Now, we never got to the point where we had to lay any more people than the 5 off. We never got to the point where we had to get rid of anything like Service Titan or vehicles or anything like that. But the point of it is we had a solid plan. We saw what was coming and we literally mapped out exactly, if this happens, we do this. This happens, we do that.
Let's talk a little bit about the planning process for your exit. You've mentioned that proud moment where you had this epiphany, I want to do this, and you knew what you wanted to do, and then you entered into your exit planning. Where did this come about? I mean, you heard about this, you dreamt it, you had a friend that recommended. Did you work with someone? I got to be honest, I think about this a lot too for myself and my family and my own business, and I haven't done anything with it, number one. And number two, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, it all sparked from my mentor telling me that you're going to exit, so we might as well have a plan, right?
Gotcha.
Once I thought about that, I said, okay, the kids are so young, I'm not going to pass it on to them. I didn't want to be in the business for another 10 years. I wanted to go do something different, and I wanted to help people. I said, okay, I'm going to sell. So then we went to start planning.
So sorry, right there, we went to start planning. You went to work on this with your advisor?
Yeah, my general manager, and we started to devise.
Oh, it was the two of you, not you and the advisor.
Well, the mentor as well. Yep.
The 3 of you were involved in this planning process. Okay.
Yeah, so we planned on selling. We gave ourselves a 2-year time frame, which is exactly when we sold it. We came up with a number and then we reversed engineered. That's another thing that came out with COVID. I was operating like most entrepreneurs. No planning, didn't know my numbers, just putting out fires every single day. That's how I ran the business pre-COVID. Once I got a mentor, I started dialing everything in and planning everything. We planned literally our year. We had a budget dialed in to the point where we knew we needed this many calls, this much revenue per call, this many technicians, this many trucks on the road. Our pricing needed to be at this point. So it was all about reverse engineering. And I feel like with any business plan, whether it's an exit, whether you want to scale, whether you want to grow, whether you want to pass it on to your family, you need to reverse engineer it. So where you're at now, where you want to go, and then once you figure out where you want to go, it's like, okay, what are the steps to get there?
Break that down. I mean, just tell us how you guys thought about that. You wrote down on paper you wanted to get to 20, I'm guessing, top line revenue. What was it broken down into? And from a plumbing services, broken down in departments, drains and sewer, or what was the internal composition of your service department?
Yep, we had plumbing, drain cleaning, HVAC, boilers, underground, and fireplaces. We actually acquired a fireplace company in 2020 and added that into the home services that we were providing.
A little dirty secret for all those homeowners that don't know that gas fireplaces are actually in the plumbing category.
Yep, absolutely. We knew, okay, we needed, let's call the number 20 million a year, top line revenue. We needed to be 10% profit or more. We were over 10%. I'll just leave it there. We wanted to have a certain amount of EBITDA. So we'll call that 0.7. So we knew we wanted 1.7, and we knew that we could probably get multiples between 8 and 15. That's where the planning started, right? We knew what the home service multiples would typically bring was somewhere between 6 and 10 was what they were doing, but during COVID it increased. So this is another part of the strategic planning and why we exited when we exited. Basically, that's how we built our budget and broke it down. So each department was broken down in what revenue it needed to do to produce those numbers. Take 20 and divide it by 5 departments.
This is interesting too, I think, at least, because it sounds like different plumbing companies treat departments differently, but you guys had it more or less, at least for planning purposes, and whether or not you got there is interesting, I think, but it was an equal split, 20% each. So 4 million per department plus or minus is what you were shooting for?
No, I just broke it down like that's the way you could do it.
This wasn't representative of your numbers.
We took and looked at where each department was the year before. So HVAC was 30% of our company.
Okay.
Right? Plumbing was, I think, 40%. We just correlated it. I did that just for simple math.
Yeah, but that's helpful.
Basically, that's how the budget was. That's where the reverse engineering came in. If we knew we needed, for number's sake, 1,000 calls for plumbing, X amount of dollars, we started tracking that daily. And if we were well off, sometimes we had extra, sometimes we had less, right? So we just started tracking that daily, but we had it broken down literally per call, per average ticket, per booking percentage. We knew if we were booking at 70% and we needed 1,000 calls, we actually needed 1,300 calls to get us to where we needed to be. We calculated all that, and that was in that reverse engineering. And by doing that and tracking it every single day, and it's like, okay, so if we needed 10 calls today and we only got 9, tomorrow we needed to do 11, and that's what we would push for. And we got it so dialed in, everybody, each person in their roles knew exactly which minimum standards they had to hit. If it was 9 calls a day that we needed booked from the CSRs and we needed to close at 80%, so we needed to close 8 of those calls, our technicians knew their minimum standards was 80% close rate, and they were reporting that back. So it wasn't just the GM and the CEO that knew this stuff. It trickled all the way down to the technicians, to the guy that started yesterday that was pushing a broom in the warehouse. Everybody knew what the goal was.
I would argue that's a pretty common theme throughout the more successful companies. You know, that's the idea behind the dashboards and the scorecards and the KPIs, and everybody's got a goal. You're either working together to achieve that goal and achieving and or exceeding that goal, or you're not to try and oversimplify it too much, but that's kind of the reality of it.
We're running the company before KPIs and scorecards and that stuff too, to when we implemented it. We didn't start with KPIs and scorecards. Started like most entrepreneurs. We didn't have this stuff in place. We put it in place after we had over 100 employees.
You put it in that late?
We did not have systems and processes till year 10. We hit 12 million in our 10th year, 12 million top line revenue with 0 systems and processes in place. That's when, again, the magic of COVID opened our eyes and said, okay, we got to do something different. Look, if you want to reverse engineer anything, you have to have a metric. You don't have metrics, you can't reverse engineer. And that was part of the planning.
I think that's really smart. Just going linearly, you're done with your plan. Out of curiosity, the consultant that you were working with, your advisor, was their fee structure? Did they have anything in this, or no? Were they just a cash retainer-based fee?
We had a 3-year contract with them, and it was a monthly. We chose to go into their highest level, knowing where we wanted to go, we wanted to be in the top tier. That was the biggest thing. I was in this group with 350 other companies, right? Less than 10% did what I did. It makes me wonder, it's like, why did some succeed and some didn't? And it was literally the action. I took things and I immediately put it into action.
Sure.
Some things worked, some things didn't work. So if it didn't work, we went back to the drawing board. That was probably the biggest reason for my success that others weren't having, is we showed up consistently. We listened to what they had to say, as well as we implemented very fast, very, very fast.
That's what you got to do. Just with all this stuff, there's a lot of nuance to all of these trades. There's a lot of people that trivialize how they are because at the surface, they might seem simplistic and all the same. And I don't believe that's true. You've got demographics, socioeconomics, competitors, team composition, timing, right? As you were the first to admit, if COVID didn't happen, you wouldn't be here, right? The multiples that sounds like anyway, you were one of the beneficiaries of the higher multiples don't exist today, right? Nobody is getting those. We've had a lot of people on from brokers to PE groups, and nobody's getting what they were getting in COVID. Some of it's just serendipity. It's just right place, right time. And like you said, doing the right things. But at the end of the day, which I like what you said, and I definitely agree, and you got to show up. You got to do the work, and you got to try different things, because the old adage of you got to throw some shit against the wall and see what sticks. And it's just not all going to stick. And what stuck for you might not stick for, as you said, the other 230 groups that were participating in this thing. Like, I'm sure a lot of them were being told the same thing. And there might have been a carbon copy of you that was in another market that was doing exactly what you did, and it didn't stick. If you've ever seen one of those movies of these like parallel universes, right? Like if you're operating two people in parallel universes doing the exact same thing, like the outcomes are going to be different. One of the best things, interesting things that was ever said, and hard for a lot of people to understand this unless you experience it. We had identical twins. The OB, when they came out, said, well, at the lowest level, the DNA, right? They are identical. They have the exact same everything. They're identical twins by definition. From here forward, they are different people. That moment 7 years ago, I did not understand that. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, same nurturing, same upbringing, more or less the same foods. I still don't understand it to this day, but those two girls could not be more different from one another, even though they look exactly the same. It's remarkable. The same parents, the same sleeping, the same food is put in front of them every night. And it's like the same opportunities. Absolutely mind-blowing. We've gotten to a point where you're done with your planning. You're doing what? I've heard a bunch of different stories here. You're interviewing brokers. Who are you talking to? How did you step into that? Or did you just have a guy, kind of trust that, go with that? What happened there? Because there's a lot that still can happen in terms of, finding the right person to represent you, represent the company, and get the best value that exists in the market for you.
Yeah, great question. A couple different ways to answer it, but I'll give you firsthand what I did. I was in masterminds with people that were going through the same thing that I was going through, which I feel is really important, the people you surround yourself with. Now, I started asking lots of questions, Zach. Specifically, the reason I would join these groups and I would ask the people that were going through what I was going through is because I wanted to learn. Now, I interviewed 3 brokers before I signed with the one that I was going to go with. I interviewed 3 CPAs. I interviewed 3 attorneys. The reason I did that is I wanted to take the questions from the people that had either were in the process of doing what I was doing or had already done it, and bring it back to those interviews and see the answers that I was getting. And then I connected all the dots. That's what worked well for me. And I know other guys that just went with the broker that was recommended by someone. I also thought I could do it alone. This is the really interesting.
Thought you could do what alone?
I thought I could exit alone without a broker, right?
Yeah.
So I went to market and I had 3 companies interested in me without a broker. And, one company who I ultimately sold to, they came to me and they were like, oh, it's so wonderful. We have an offer for you. We have an LOI and we want to offer you this. And I'd already made up my mind I was going to go with the broker, but I wanted to see what they would do. So they offered me a number that was significantly less than what I sold for. My broker told me that this was going to happen. I remember we were all on Zoom and I said, hey, appreciate it. That's a really great offer. I came here today to let you guys know that we hired a broker, and you should have seen their faces. They almost went blank. Their jaws hit the floor because my broker said this to me. And this is one thing that stuck out. And if you're going through this or about to go into this process, these companies that want to acquire you, they have two checkbooks. One is if you have a broker, one is if you don't. And literally in 1 week's time, my number grew by $4.5 million because I hired a broker. So the broker not only paid for himself and some, he predicted everything that was going to happen in there. So that's one thing that I would suggest to you guys that are thinking about exiting or selling a business. The right fit broker is definitely better than doing it yourself. It's been proven time and time again since I did my exit, and I've helped a couple other people exit. Same thing. Whatever you think you're going to save, you're not.
What's actually interesting about this story, especially today, I would say, because some of the broker value is actually finding the buyer, right? So this story is interesting because you already had 3 potential buyers courting you and at your disposal, at which point, in which case, you're just like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Would you just humor us? What's the range of the brokers?
1%.
1%. Was that consistent across all the brokers? Was it pretty fixed, or was there a little fluctuation?
There was definitely fluctuation. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to recant the statement, Zach. It was 5%. It fluctuated. I had one guy at 4 and another guy at 6.
Gotcha. And again, going back to the question at hand here is save a lot of money. And when you've got buyers, namely 3 in your pocket and ready to serve LOIs, what's the broker going to do? I don't need a buyer. You're ready to hand over your financials. Probably not the same, but if I could put it into terms for average person, it's like you found a house that you want that's ready to be sold. What do you need the realtor for? And the answer is there's a lot of shit that happens after they accept the offer. Number one, and even to get them to accept an offer. Recently, I was not a huge fan of realtors in general. However, I would argue that there's a lot of stuff. Their fees are, subjective, and same with probably a broker. Are they worth 5% or whatever, plus or minus? You could argue that to the end of time. However, there's a lot of stuff, and you could speak to this, that happens once you get a buyer, whether it's in real estate or selling a business, that you don't have a freaking clue about. Like all the legal stuff, all the paperwork, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. Unless you've bought and sold a lot of businesses, your eyes are going to roll back into the back of your head.
Yeah, and you nailed it, Zach. So when I signed with the broker, he didn't want me to go with one of the 3 that had been approaching me. Let's go to open market. Let's take you in front of 30 or 40 different buyers. He felt could get more money. He told me up front. He was like, look, I don't think this is the best offer for you. By knowing that, it allowed me to make some decision. I was very educated on it and decide what's best for me. I wanted to close in a 90-day time frame, which we did. We actually closed a week short of 90 days. That's ultimately why I went with the person that I went with to sell to. He was telling me, let's go to open market. It was my choice to go with one of the people that were approaching me because they guaranteed me we could close in 90 days. But to your other point, not only the money, Zach, but the things that went into it after LOI. If I wouldn't have had his team, oh man. And they came last minute. We closed on a Monday. And on that Friday, they were trying to negotiate $2 million off the deal. Well, my broker had everything in order. They did something that probably shouldn't have. They pulled a license with the state and registered it before they bought the company. My broker was like, hey, look, we could negotiate this or we could just end up in litigation. And they were like, yeah, no, we screwed up. We'll pay you exactly what we said. But that's just it. The broker isn't just finding you the sale. They're walking you hand in hand the whole way. His team was incredible. I was told this by my mentor who had bought and sold companies, and I was told by the broker. Through this whole process, I do not answer anything. I sit there, and if I'm asked a question, I point who to answer it, right? Whether that's the broker, whether that's my financial person internally, whether that's my general manager. These companies don't want the owner involved at all. The less the owner is involved in, the more your company's worth. And literally, when we were on meetings going through this, they would say, Chuck, we got this. You have to explain everything, right? To explain how you got to those numbers, where your profit is, your add backs, all the things. But that's not for you to do. That's for your broker's team to do, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's like a CYA situation. Like that's what they're there for. And they're there to make sure that you get the best deal that you can benefit, they can benefit. It's almost like in a lot of ways kind of a lawyer, right? Like protecting you from yourself. You don't know what you don't know. On the other side, I think whether or not it was an accident or intentional or just a tactic, right? If it's like shady or ethical or whatever, but like they did what they did, the other side, and whatever reason they did it, their interests are the same, right? They want to get the best deal that they can get at market and given that time. And that's what their interests are. If it's shady and unethical, that's a different conversation. But the point is, it's a deal and everybody wants to do right by themselves and their own pocketbooks.
Diligence is just that, right? You explained it with the housing and realtors. If you're a buyer, you're looking for something wrong, something that needs to be fixed to drive the price down. That's the same thing when you're selling a business. Diligent, if you're a buyer, and if you're a seller, you're trying to give an answer of, yeah, the roof was replaced 5 years ago. It doesn't need to be replaced. Or the HVAC system was replaced 6 years ago with a life expectancy of 12. That's the same thing when you're selling a business. Diligence is just that. Both sides have an agenda.
That's well said. And I think that's something that gets overlooked by a lot of people in general is that, and you even said it, and I just want to pull it through again, is that like that was really important to you as the seller. I've literally had people on here that like time is not a factor. There's people that have gone through this for multiple years and it's like, I don't care, I'm not going away. But for you, whatever the pain point there was, just want to get in and get out. And I mean, there's been transactions that are a couple weeks because that's what needs to be done. I got to get it done before the season or after the season or before I go on vacation or whatever it is. But this is the part of the negotiation. And it's the same thing in the house, right? Like the same thing. You're like, can we get this done in 30 days? And if someone's like, no, then you're like, all right, well, I'm going to walk. Either get it done in 30 days or go find another buyer. It's that simple. Anything else just in that process that jumped out at you? The best way to say it is if you were advising, and this is a great segue because where you're at now, right? And why you're where you at now at the OG. What do you tell or advise some of your clients and partners that are looking forward to selling, like, watch out for this?
Fantastic question. Part of the reason why we started the OG group is this, because going through the whole process, just like running a company without systems and processes versus running once you have those in place, this is a very, very good topic. The biggest thing that I can say was an eye-opener for us, we left a ton of money on the table. We were not dialed in, but it's good. It was a lesson in the fact that I can teach other people to do it, right? So our chart of accounts was probably where we had things put in place and tracking metrics. We were 85% dialed in. That 15% is where we left money on the table, right? Like you need to account for everything. So if you're putting gas in your personal vehicle, but you're running it through the company just like business owners do, we get it, tax purposes, right? If you account for that, that can be used for your add backs. So everything needs to be dialed in. I would say short answer to your question is accounting has to be spot on. And I probably left $400,000 or $500,000 on the table because I wasn't dialed in where I should have been. The other is tax planning. If you don't have a good tax plan before you exit, if you don't have things in place before you exit, guess what? Capital gains is a real thing. So you have to have things in place before that comes in. Once you put it into your account and then transfer it to another account, it's a different strategy. So working with a CPA that understands this, very, very, very important. Let's say you get $50 million, right? Let's just put a number out there. Do you want to give 30% of that to capital gains? No. That's one thing we did well. We had a very good tax strategy, and I share that with a lot of companies that come to me for exiting. The charter accountants could have done better, but also, it's literally everything. Going through the add back process, cash that comes into the business. If you're buying gas or going on vacation or dinners or remodeling your house or any of these things, all of it adds up. If you're going to get a 10x multiple, for every $100,000 is $1 million payout for you. If you think about that, it adds up pretty quickly. How fast can you write off $100,000 in your business for personals? Pretty fast. And that's where people miss a lot. And I'll tell you, we were close. We had about 85%. But even my director of admin, who brought all the numbers to the table, she said, now that I've been through this process and learned where things should have been, we went through this again, it would be a very different outcome.
Right.
Good news is, Zach, she now went out and started her own fractional CFO company. So I do work with her. She works with my chart of accounts on the Opus and Golds Group and anybody that we partner with.
Gotcha. Going back to the earlier point too of your buyer private equity group, was it a whole
Yes.
private equity group? Okay.
Yep.
Somehow we glossed over that. But the private equity group that purchased you guys, they're not idiots. They 100% saw this and they probably delighted that you were doing this, right? Like saved them, like you just said, $500,000, right? Or whatever. So
They're not going to bring it to your attention.
no, absolutely not. It's back to that whatever serves them, they're going to put on the table, and whatever doesn't, they're going to, just slide it under the rug. So the brokers that we've talked to, that's a pretty common one. The one that you hear over and over again is what you just said. Don't put the G-Wagon on your chart of accounts, right? Don't put cousin Vinny on the chart of accounts. That's actually not contributing to your bottom line. That's going to hurt you 100x downstream. So let's just follow up with this segue here and how all of this led to where you are today. What was the pain point here? You said you wanted to do something else. You could be probably in Tahiti on the beach with some umbrella drinks right about now, but you decided to start the OG group and help out other contractors. And what are you doing with them? You're billed as a consultant, if you will. What's the main problem that you're trying to solve for? You have a few handfuls of clients right now, which is awesome given you've started this in the fall, right? When did you guys officially start?
So we launched in November, and the thoughts behind it, and I say we because I'm the co-founder, my sister, who was my general manager and helped me get to a position to where I could exit the company. She helped me co-found the Opus and Golds Group. She's my partner in it. Basically, what we're doing, Zach, is first of all, we meet with the business owners and we find out what they want to do. What is their plan? That's one of the first conversation. Is it to grow and scale? Is it to sell? Is it to pass it down? Once we have that, then we start with them planning, right? Where they're at, where they want to be, and reverse engineering. I feel that that's what makes us a lot different. I don't want to be categorized in the coaching realm because we're not coaching. I would call it boutique consultant, where you can pay us for our time. We can do an equity deal. We could become partners in the company, either or. But it's all about what fits the companies, and not every company is the right fit for us. Right now, we're working with pest control companies, roofers, paver companies, mostly contractors, but it doesn't have to be just home services. Like home services is one of our specialties, but we can work on pretty much any business. That's the difference is we go in, we find out where they want to go. What is the end goal? And if they don't know the end goal, then we help them sort that out. Let us hop on a couple calls. We'll ask some questions. On-sites is another way. We'll come down and we will do an on-site at the company. That helps us learn a lot about the business. So some people will come to us and be like, I don't even know where to start, right? Like, I don't know. I know some things that are wrong with my company. I want to know everything. So we would recommend doing an on-site with them. Once we get in for a 2 or 3 day on-site, we can uncover a lot of things. Whether it's they want to grow and scale, they want to exit, they want to pass it down, whatever it may be, we're going to see a lot of things like, okay, what are their systems and processes or lack of? What is their communication like? What is their leadership like? is the company culture? What is, the accountability? We're going to uncover a ton of things on those on-sites, and then we can build them a package based on what we've uncovered on how we can help them. Sometimes we can do it without an on-site and we can just do it over Zoom. But most of the time, seeing the company and the business in action is best, right? We have clients anywhere from doing 600,000 a year top line revenue all the way to 25 million. We really can work with any business. And obviously, the $600,000 top line revenue company is doing a different package than the $25 million a year company because their needs are so much different. That's really what we're doing now. We do have equity in 2 companies that we work with, basically sitting on as a board of directors. We clearly define our roles and where we're going to fit in the company. I'm not going to go partner with a plumbing company and go out and install a water heater. That's just not where I'm best fit at now. I'm best fit at helping you strategize and, work on your marketing, recruiting, culture, accountability, leadership, all that stuff. That's going to be my role. That's the basic of it. We want to help people because I remember pre-COVID, before I got a mentor, being stuck and feeling stuck, right? We just want to help business owners. We offer Facebook group. It's called OG Business Success Group, free to join. Every Thursday at 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we do a mastermind or what's called open office hours, where if you're a business owner or a manager and you just want to tackle something, jump on one of those times with us and we'll help you build an actionable plan right there on whatever's going on in your business, whether it's good or bad. We give a lot back to the community. Zach, I'm 45 years old. The beach and sipping Mai Tais doesn't really appeal to me at my age right now, right? Playing golf isn't really my thing. I love when people show up. We just had a call at 11 o'clock a few hours ago, and I had 4 people show up. And one guy consistently shows up. He had an issue with an employee. We used about 30 minutes of the time, and we tackled that issue. It was a high-producing, high-level employee for him. And he was unsure of what to do. I love that stuff. I love when people show up and get engaged and show up consistently, because that was the secret sauce for me. I didn't just show up with my mentor one time and everything worked for me. No, I was there 3-4 times a week asking questions, implementing stuff, going back and saying, hey, this didn't work. The shit against the wall fell off. What do I do now? Right? And I just love that. And I love to serve people. I really do. Ultimately, yeah, we want to work with you in one shape or form, whether you're on our platform or an equity partner, but we also give very freely of our time. So jump on a call with us whenever you like and see it for yourself. See it in action. It's kind of the try it and make sure that I'm the right fit, because not everybody's the right fit. We've had to let clients go already in a short amount of time.
What was that all about?
It's not about the money for us.
What was the misalignment?
They were expecting results and not doing the actions. They expect to just show up and get results without actually doing the work. That's not a great fit. We parted very good terms. But at the same time, they still show up on our Thursday calls and ask questions. And maybe in the future, they'll be ready to do the work. And they'll be a fit.
I think there's a lot of people like that. There really are, that just kind of go through the motions and get, I don't know what you call it. I feel like there's an expression for this, but it's escaping me. Some sort of like implementation lock. It's almost like a fear of failure, right? Maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's something else, but you're frozen because you're afraid that, again, either it's not going to work, or there's also some of these smaller companies, which you can probably speak to. It's not implementation lock in the sense that they're afraid to fail, but they haven't released power yet, or they're afraid to have the structures in place and therefore they're time poor. They're too busy in everyone's business, micromanaging everything and can't get out of their own way. And therefore they don't have any time because they don't have any processes set up and they don't have anyone managing anything. And they're caught up in the minutia of the business.
And I break it down just like this, right? I have a responsibility to my clients. I'm not responsible for my clients. Basically, Zach, I'm there to identify the problems. You're the one that's going to take action.
And if you don't take action, you're not going to see any change. Well, cool, man. That was it was great. That was a lot of new stuff. Every one of these I do, which makes it so many new angles and so many new things that are offered up and learnings that hopefully our listeners can take something and implement themselves, right? Your preferred platform of choice for communication is mobile, Facebook, Instagram.
Facebook, Instagram is fine. Chuck Staszkiewicz. Hopefully you can put my name and link in your stuff. Trying to spell that is going to be hard. Find me on Facebook that way. You can always reach out. Go on opusgolds.com, opusgolds.com. And my calendar is right there. If you want to book a 1-hour strategy session with us, complimentary, it's right there for you. Some people like to jump on the group calls. Some people might have a bigger issue in their business that they can't share in a group platform. Jump on and book a strategy session with us. Come with anything that's going on in your business, good or bad. I don't believe there's anything that can't be solved in a business. I've been sued. I've had employees sue me. I've had 5 employees leave at one time. I've had $1 million months and profit. I've had it all happen, right? So there's not anything that can be solved in a business. If I don't know the answer right away, I definitely know where to go get the answers.
Thank you very much. We will look for you on social, and hopefully everybody can join the Opus Golds Group, can DM me or find Chuck on Facebook. We appreciate everybody for listening. Thanks for being here, and go get them.